Welcome to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, the podcast where we dive deep into the journey from vision to reality. I'm Kelly Jackson, your guide on this path of self-discovery, transformation, and intentional living. Here, we explore everything from mindset shifts and personal growth to spiritual alignment and entrepreneurship, sharing insights, stories, and actionable wisdom to help you live a life in harmony with your dreams. Every episode will dig into what it means to not only dream big, but to actually consciously create the life you envision. Let's turn your dreams into real life. Before we begin, let's land for a moment. You showed up today because part of you is turning toward truth, expansion, and alignment. Sunday Spark is my weekly email created for the ones who are ready to live life in full ownership, to build in rhythm and grow from a place of ease. Each letter includes insights, activation prompts, and practical tools woven through my holistic trifecta, which is optimal health, positive relationships, and wealth building. And the best part? It's only 45 to 90 seconds to read. It's a quick spark, a gentle activation, something you can carry into your week. If you want that kind of moment in your inbox every Sunday, you're invited. Sunday Spark is there. It's ready when you are. The link to join is in the show notes. Welcome back. Last week, I talked about stewardship, about caring for something deeply while knowing it may not be yours forever. And that conversation naturally leads here because stewardship often leads to clarity, and clarity reorganizes your life. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you carry. It changes what you continue. And eventually, clarity asks a question that most of us don't want to answer. What needs to be released? And there's this moment that happens after realization. Not the realization itself, but the moment when you realize that you can't unsee what you now know. And you can't go back in your life, or you can go back in your life, your routines, your relationship, your roles, but something feels different. And nothing may have changed externally yet, but internally the story has shifted. And this is the uncomfortable space, okay? The space between knowing and acting. And it's where you are still living inside of something that your nervous system has already moved beyond. Okay? That space can feel confusing. It can feel tender. It can feel disorienting. Sometimes you can feel stuck in that space. But guess what? It's also sacred. Because that's where truth is integrating. There is a moment that happens after realization, okay, where, again, nothing has changed externally, but internally, you know something is different. For me, it felt like a recognition that kept returning. And I'm speaking as a continuation of last week. I'm speaking about Pongo again. It felt like a recognition that kept returning. And it was like this sentence that I didn't say out loud yet, but one that felt true in my body. And I noticed that when I imagined one path, I felt tension. And when I imagined another, I felt calm. And there was this grief in that awareness, but there was also peace. Not the peace of certainty about what would happen next, but the peace of honesty. And that is the space I'm talking about, that space where clarity is present, even if action hasn't arrived yet. And I'm going to give you an example of a time when I realized that something was true, but I hadn't done anything about it yet. And again, this is with Pongo. This is realizing a chapter was complete, realizing that my role had shifted, realizing that my feelings had changed, realizing that something needed to be released, but there I was still living normally. So when I knew Pongo was healthy, everything in my life is going great, like it's time to move forward, and I knew that our foster chapter was complete. I knew that my role as his foster giver, caretaker, family, mom, whatever you want to call it, I knew that it was shifting, and that I was going to say that my feelings were shifting, but I always knew, but my feelings of acceptance for just like tolerating this whole situation as it was without moving forward or really taking action until it was fruitful in regards to getting him to his forever home. So I knew he had to be released, yet there would be other things going on in my life, and I was prioritizing these other things first. And a big part of that, again, is because he was such a good freaking dog. Like, he was just so cute, so sweet, he was just great. So it wasn't like it was it wasn't like I was trying to get some unruly, poorly mannered nuance of a dog out of my house. It was like not at all a situation like that. This was just, he was the coolest little guy. So, but I knew he had to be released for many reasons, because he wasn't ours. He never was. Yet I was still living normally. I was tending to my daughters, to my businesses, to the house, to just other things that needed to be tending to. And again, there was this moment when I recognized something internally, but externally at that point, my life still looked the same. But what started happening was the clarity, this quiet recognition that like, it is time. I kept getting these thoughts. It was like they kept coming more frequently. It's time to, Pongo's ready for his home. It's time. It's time. Like, he's the dog of someone's dreams. It's time. And I kept having this subtle feeling like it's time to move forward with this. I would keep hearing this sentence internally repeating, just like, okay, it's time for Pongo to go. It's time. And it wasn't panic. It wasn't like this desperation panic sort of thing. But I mean, it was just this calm knowing that like, it's time. It's time. This chapter is closing. It wasn't so much that it was loud or urgent. It was a recognition that kept returning. And I knew I couldn't at that point ignore it any longer. Like, when it began to keep repeating that often, of like, I was kept being reminded every day. I would hear it, and then it's like, yeah, it's time. So there was also a body awareness that was heightening and growing. And, this is where embodiment lives, guys, not necessarily in your thoughts, but in the sensations, what you feel. And that's what I was kind of saying earlier when I was leading in, was about how there was relief when I was imagining change, and there was tension when I was imagining staying. Like, as much as I love Pongo and love being in the moment with him and, cuddling him, give him a hug, throwing the rope and watching his little funny, goofy run to go get it. He's like so cute. And I loved being in the moment with him. But when I imagined him staying in like 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, it was like the amount of tension that I felt because I knew it wasn't aligned. And when I imagined him aligning with his forever home and this happy, this person and or people happily welcoming him into their life, they're excited to get him, I felt so much relief. And guess what? I felt calm when I could name that truth, when I could sit there and say, yes, this is the right move. This is what, and when I tried to avoid all this, it felt heavy. My body felt different depending on which version of reality I imagined, is what I'm saying. And there was emotional tension and calm. And this is kind of the paradox, because often when clarity comes, you're going to feel sadness and relief, and you're going to feel grief and peace, and uncertainty and certainty, and that's the emotional texture that I was experiencing while all this was happening and leading up to it. And there was both tenderness and calm. It wasn't distress. It was really this feeling of something settling into truth. And eventually, clarity becomes less of a thought and it becomes more of an invitation. And that's where I was heading. I was accepting the invitation. I was like, okay, it's time. And it's time to let him go. And we've all heard that phrase. If you love something, let it go. And I would say that most people resist that idea, or have at some point, because we hear it as abandonment or failure or loss. And I'm starting to understand more and more and more that phrase differently. Letting go is not about discarding something, y'all. It's about respecting its natural completion, and it's about recognizing when the role that you played has fulfilled its purpose, and trusting that love doesn't disappear when form changes, because sometimes letting go is the most loving act available. And because you're no longer holding something into shape that no longer fits, there is definitely an emotional nuance. So I had that 3.5 week window of knowing, and I decided this is going to be this sacred container of closure for Pongo and I, where I can feel both relief and grief, and I'm not going to rush either. I'm not going to push either down. I'm just going to allow whatever rises to rise. And I had to realize that I wasn't abandoning Pongo. I wasn't, because one of the fears that I kept feeling was that, because I cared about him so much. And again, 3.5 years is a long time to share your life with someone. And so I kept fearing that he's going to be so confused. He's going to be so hurt. Because what if, I knew how much we loved him and took care of him and the kind of life he had. And so it's like, I wanted him to have the same or better. And then and I had to keep reminding myself the same or better, because what I found myself doing was being like, what if he goes somewhere and he doesn't get this same kind of love? And then he's like, what did I do wrong? Like, why did you send me here? Wasn't I good? Wasn't I sweet? Why did you punish me? Why did you send me away? And that was fear. And that was a narrative that wasn't serving me. And just, again, why I have to keep coming back to the same or better, because that is a mantra that I live by. I had to remember that applies to Pongo too, the same or better, and that we never intentionally went out seeking this dog. And the people who have Pongo now were on a waiting list to adopt specifically his breed, And so this is people who were wanting, they are arranging their life to bring this dog into their world, their life, And so the same or better. And but there was lots of times that I just felt like he didn't do anything wrong, and so I felt like I didn't want him to be like, why did you send me away? But then again, when you reframe that and say the same or better, then it's like, I can't believe that I'm the best that there is for him. I did the best I could for the season that he was with me. That doesn't mean that his best life is with me. And I have to be willing to, because I love him so much, I have to let him go so that he can align with the family that, again, is waiting for him, that is dreaming about him, that is praying for him, that can't wait to have him. And yeah, so I had to have compassion for myself and for others and for just everything, and realize that I wasn't abandoning Pongo, that I was letting him go. I was releasing him because I love him and because his best life is still ahead of him. And that brings me to shedding. So, we closed the year of the snake. That was on February 16th, was the last day of the year of the snake. And snakes do not negotiate with old skin. They don't intellectualize it. They don't sentimentalize it. They don't try to stretch it longer than it fits. They shed. Because growth makes old skin uninhabitable, and shedding isn't violent. It's biological, right? It's natural. It's necessary for movement. What's beautiful is that shedding doesn't destroy the snake. It reveals the snake. Have you ever seen a snake shedding? Mid-shed, it's pretty cool. So then, again, the last day of the year of the snake was February 16th, and then we move into the year of the horse. And the horse does not shed. The horse runs. Okay? Movement follows release. Momentum follows shedding. Expansion follows honesty. So if this season had felt like shedding, right, where you're tender, you're vulnerable, you're identity shifting, you're letting go, maybe that's because your life is preparing to move. And that brings us back to clarity. Okay? Clarity doesn't just change decisions, it changes identity. And it changes boundaries, and it changes relationships, and it changes how you spend time. It changes what you say yes to, okay? It even changes how you see your past. You Your past didn't change. Past is the past. What happened, happened. However, clarity allows you to see it differently, perceive it differently. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm noticing is that clarity does not remove love, it removes confusion. And you can love something and still release it. And you can appreciate something and still complete it. And you can be grateful for something and still move forward. All of those things are not opposites, they coexist. And when I look back at my life, I can see that coexistence everywhere. I can see it in the businesses I built, businesses that were real, meaningful chapters of my life, places where I invested energy and creativity and leadership, problem solving, identity. They weren't experiments. I mean, they were like lived seasons. And yet there came a moment with each one where appreciation and completion existed at the same time. Okay, I could be grateful for what something gave me and also recognize that I wasn't meant to live there forever. And that doesn't negate the impact. It doesn't erase the value. It doesn't turn the experience into a mistake. It simply acknowledges that growth changes our relationship to things. And I see this in friendships too, okay? There are friendships that shaped entire eras of my life. Friendships where we shared time and laughter and support, experiences that felt central to who I was at the time. And then life moved forward. And not because anything was wrong, not because anyone failed, not because anything like that. No blaming, no finger pointing. It's because seasons shifted, priorities evolved, geography changed, identities expanded, okay? And what remains is not loss, it's imprint. I see it in roles I've inhabited, okay? In versions of myself that were real and very much true when I was living inside of them. Roles that demanded certain skills, certain ways of being, ways of relating to the world, okay? And then when I stepped out of those roles, I didn't stop valuing them. I carried them with me. And I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings that we have about release is we assume that release requires rejection. But release can be reverent, guys. Release can be appreciative. Release can say, thank you for who I was here. Thank you for what this gave me. Thank you for the chapter. And I let go with gratitude. And that perspective changes everything because instead of feeling like we are constantly losing things, we begin to recognize that we're accumulating experiences that are shaping us. And nothing disappears, it integrates. And that's why love and release can exist together because love is not erased when form changes. Love becomes a memory. It becomes a skill, a perspective, growth, insight, wisdom, and love becomes part of who you are. And this is where the release stops feeling like loss and it starts feeling like self-trust. That was a big act of self-trust of releasing Pongo and trusting myself that was the right decision and I didn't have to feel guilty about it because I knew that while he was with me, I'd given him the best possible life. And I also knew that it was not something I ever intentionally signed up for, So if you are in a season of release, I want you to hear this. You don't need to demonize what you're leaving. You don't need to rewrite the story to justify your exit, okay? And you really don't need to pretend that something was meaningful because it ended. You can honor what was and still release what is complete. And that's embodied maturity. you know, and certainly self-trust. And maybe the real meaning of if you love something, let it go is this. Maybe it's love it enough to let it change, and love it enough to let yourself change, and love it enough to let life keep moving. So shedding is not the end of movement, it's the beginning of it. And I really feel this with Pongo. Once I let him go, I didn't realize how much I had adapted my life to accommodate him and to have him in my life, and how much of my life was of my own maybe standards and ideals I had shifted or compromised on to be able to be present for him or provide the best life that I could for him. And it was never anything that I did was not, I didn't feel resentful about it. I didn't feel bitter about it. And I was actually quite surprised how unaware I was of how much I had altered my life until he was gone. And that's when I started really seeing, wow, how much of my life had shifted. Because again, he came in 1 month after a life-changing event. Only 1 month. And then 2 days after he came, something happened that turned my world upside down. And so he entered my life at a time when it wasn't like a stable time. And so energetically, do you understand what I'm saying? That just, it all kind of adapted. I wasn't even fully consciously aware of how much until I let him go. And then everything settled and I was able to see. And again, I have so much love for him and our time together. And I also knew it was the right choice, and the way it ended up couldn't have gone any better. And now it felt like this. I didn't even, so slowly, it was like if somebody's just gradually over 3.5 years pulling you back a little bit each time, just like a hair. Every day. What happened was when I released Pongo, there was this tension I didn't even realize was there. And it was like, and when I say tension, and I said right before that, pulling back, imagine someone pulling back an arrow in a bow. And then when you release the arrow, it goes shooting across the sky, right? That's kind of what it felt like. I didn't even realize, because it was so slow and so gradual, and it was happening over years, that I was being pulled back, that there was this tension that was being created. And when I finally released him, which again, as a reminder, was what I said the day we found him. He's not ours. We can't keep him. I never believed he was ours to keep forever. And when I let go and I closed that loop, it was like somebody released the arrow. And from there, the energy, it was like the setback is a setup for something greater. And I flew. And right after letting him go and him going to his forever home, I renovated two rooms in my home, and I reclaimed 100 square feet of room that had become, the space for the dogs, but I reclaimed that as this amazing, cozy little area I call the nest. And I created a home dojo, which I'm absolutely obsessed with. And these are things that I had been wanting to do, been talking about doing, but it was just once I let go, instantly these things happened. But that was just the beginning, and it's kind of been this ripple effect. And I'm just sitting inside of this really in awe and gratitude, and just for following through with with what I knew was the right choice. And look, just because it's the right choice doesn't even always mean it's the easy choice. It was still difficult. It was hard to let go, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. So the way that I handled that was having lots of conversations with Pongo, where I just would talk to him and let him know. Dogs understand energy, and let him know what was going on so there wouldn't be any surprises. And of course, just lots of one-on-one walks with just he and I. And I did that for the couple months leading up to his release. And he would still have plenty of time with Lyric too, where they got to play together, but thought it was important that I spend some one-on-one time with him as well. And yeah, it was good. Just, when you know something is not going to be there forever, there's a just different way of kind of taking those mental pictures and being in the moment. And I feel like I did a really good job of that. And so, yeah, I miss him. Of course I miss him. He's adorable, and he was so amazing. And I also know that was the right choice. And so again, sometimes when you love something, you got to let it go. It's the best for all souls involved. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It. I hope today's episode sparked something powerful within you. Remember, every step you take towards your vision counts, no matter how small. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a second to hit that subscribe button or leave a review. That would be amazing. Or share the podcast with someone who's ready to bring their dreams into reality too. And if you're looking to dive deeper, connect with me on social media at Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, or at BE_what you want. Or visit dreameditThenRealLifedIt.us for more resources on aligning your life, business, and dreams. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep manifesting your dreams into real life. Love you, friends.